confession of an ex-Satanist. Dear brothers and dear friends, we want to share with you this testimony, which like the other testimonies awakens us in relation to spiritual warfare. It is the story of the young Felician Mulop who, at the age of 13, voluntarily involved himself in witchcraft after watching demonstrations of a magician in their college. He climbed the ladder in Satan's camp and committed dreadful damage until he accepted God's outstretched hand and gave his life to Jesus Christ. This testimony opens our eyes more on the works of the world of darkness in general, and on the submarine world in particular. It is very clear, and warns us against the risk of living without having Jesus Christ as Lord and Master, and also against the danger of being a born-again Christian without truly living a life of sanctification. Initiation into red magic. One day a magician came to perform magical demonstrations in our college, as it was done in the past. I approached him to consult him because I wanted to become a powerful and famous man in my city and in my school. The latter gave me the addresses of great masters of Europe so that I could get in touch with them. Then, I wrote to a great master residing in France. I told him that I wanted to become famous in my city and powerful in my school, and also to attract girls of my generation. He advised me to burn Frank's banknotes and my purchase order and throw them in the toilet. In fact, I had ordered a magic chain of power. This mystic master recommended me to go naked to the cemetery at night. I went to the cemetery that night. My master's instructions stipulated that I had to keep all this secret. I saw something strange. What I saw frightened me, but I had to be calm and not panic. So, I was surprised to find out that I had before me a large snake coming out of one of the graves of the cemetery. It had the size of an anaconda. It stood and began to growl in order to frighten me, but I kept my calm because I was determined to have power and notoriety. It was not an ordinary snake but a demon. Seeing that he had not made me flee, he opened his huge mouth in which was a bright and brilliant chain. Then, I heard a voice that commanded me to insert my hand inside the jaws of the snake and remove the magic chain. I had no choice, otherwise I would go crazy or die, and the devil would be happy to see me die because he would have won my soul. I then removed the chain from the snake's mouth and put it around my neck as a sign of victory, but unfortunately, my victory was short-lived because I was surrounded by a group of living dead in skeletal form who were singing strange song. The objective of these demons was to make me spend time at the cemetery, for the master's instructions stipulated that I had to leave the cemetery immediately after removing the chain from the mouth of the snake for fear of dying or running mad, and thanks to my agility I managed to escape these demons, but they followed me, shouting, "Thief!" They chased me with sticks and stones. Others went ahead of me to block the way, but I was able to dribble them. Finally I left the cemetery and I had just escaped death. Beloved, this was when I was only 13, but do not be surprised because there are even babies coming out of their mother's womb to travel to the invisible world and practice witchcraft. The world is full of mystery. There are terrible things happening at night while people are asleep. The next day when I arrived at school, it was as if demons had preceded me and advertised me to the students at our school. My fame was such that even girls in my school could not resist me. While I was practicing magic, I continued to serve in my church as a choir boy in the parish of Our Lady Fatima in Dolisie. The priest called me and made me understand that he is aware of the fact that I visited the world of spirits even if I had never spoken to him about it. The priest offered to introduce me to the red magic of the Red Dragon. He informed me he had to prepare somebody who would take over from him, for a priest before the expiration of his term in a city must prepare someone who will replace him and represent his magic branch. He invited me to meet the following Wednesday at the parish. After the priest's incantations, we sat on a red carpet in front of the statue of Jesus. Then the priest asked me to close my eyes and concentrate as he recited magic formulas, and while he was reciting these magical prayers, I felt like we were flying in space. Then he asked me to stand up and open my eyes. When I opened my eyes, I noticed that we were no longer in the parish but in a magical world full of beauty. It was a very well-built city with gigantic buildings, of ineffable beauty. Upon our arrival, a woman named Donna Letitia of Italian nationality came to meet us. After staring into my eyes, she began to accuse me of being a traitor, saying that I should not be introduced to the audience. Despite her insistence, the priest told her that I was going to change. After this debate they all decided to shut me up in a room with no window in which there were a light bulb and cameras that were filming me. After some time I was taken out of this room and a man was instructed to take me to the hall where there was a large meeting room. When I arrived in the conference room, I noticed that it was filled with people. There were people who were still alive and people who had already died several years ago. There were great traders of the city of Pointe-Noire, there were military and civil authorities of our country, and religious people too. I saw people that we studied in history who had died several years ago. When the meeting began, this Italian woman continued to insist that I should not be introduced to the audience because later I will betray the invisible world. It was thanks to a vote that the assembly decided to introduce me to the audience. The moderator of the meeting ordered me to go to the front and stand in the bar like in a court. A new name was given me to signify that I had become Satan's full-time servant. The chairman of the meeting was a well-known bishop in the Republic of Congo. The latter enumerated 10 laws which I had to observe. The least disobedience to these laws would result in severe punishment. As in all the enthronement meetings, all the audience was invited to the banquet hall in the same building, where the guests were supposed to taste the meat and human blood, and they danced to the rhythm of the Congolese rumba sung by the musician Franca, who was still alive at that time. Finally, the bishop approached me and gave me a book containing several magical prayers intended to invoke demonic spirits and other powerful demons like Queen Farida. He advised me to keep secret what I saw and heard in the invisible world, for fear of going mad or dying. That's how my career started in red magic. My meeting with sorcerers a few months later, I started having problems with my father, which irritated me so much that I had problems with the invisible world, for the 10 laws stipulated that I should not be angry. In my childhood I hated sorcerers. It happened one day that the president of our parish, Our Lady Fatima, wanted to kill a boy who served in the children's choir. I was informed by demons, and the very night this man was supposed to execute the boy who was his own son, I stopped him. He could not do anything against me because his power was less than mine. In fact, he was just a wizard, but I was a Satanist. This man, who was the president of our parish and the head of sorcerers, began to hate me. His hatred was so obvious, but people did not know the cause. They could not understand that there was a night conflict between him and me. During my magical life, none of my parents suspected that I belonged to the red magic branch, because I was gentle and docile. Later, I started having problems with my father, who was a well-known wizard in the community. He had a totem of crocodiles. At home we had a toy that was a bamboo plane, but in the night this toy was transformed into a mystical plane that my father used. In fact, there was a mystical airport behind our house. Our conflict began when my father could no longer leave his body to travel to the spiritual world. My demon prevented him from boarding his mystical plane, so I was no longer tolerated at home. I had to leave his house. After this misunderstanding between my father and me, I became angry, and this anger greatly disturbed the invisible world. Then Queen Farida summoned me by mystical phone, and when I went to meet her, she reminded me of my transgression and let me know she was not happy with me, and to appease her anger, she asked me to sacrifice the baby that my stepmother had with my father. This sacrifice was to calm the anger of this demonic queen. Then the queen asked me to visit my master, the priest of the Catholic Church, in order to pay for my transgression. When I arrived at the priest's house in the town of Dolisie, the latter received me with open arms, but he was disappointed because I had broken one of the 10 laws. The priest told me that to plead for the grace of the great master Satan, I had to do a novena. That means 9 days of fasting without eating or drinking in the parish. Afterward I had to sacrifice 9 children to the devil. As soon as the 9 days of fasting were completed, the priest invited me to his quarters to help me sacrifice these children to Satan. Then the priest set up a charity organization for the distribution of food and supplies to children from 2 to 12, as is the custom in Catholic churches. Every Monday we would distribute food to children. While the children were lined up, I had to put my right hand on the head of the child who will be the next victim. As a result, 9 of these children died in the course of time. I regret killing innocent children. We must understand that behind the many charitable organizations of the Catholic Church there are human sacrifices. I advise you never to allow Catholics to hold a death service for a member of your family. In fact, during this Mass, the priest sprinkles holy water on the coffin to capture the soul of the deceased, and the holy water thus sprinkled turns into a massive river in which the soul of the dead person is stuck. Now where did the food products we distributed to children come from? The answer should make us think. Before the distribution of food, we locked ourselves in a room that looked like a depot, and the priest made invocations to ask for everything we would distribute to the children on Monday. Following these magical prayers, the roof opened and tons of food and various food items came down, as if a group of invisible workers took them out of an invisible cargo plane, and piled them in the room that served us as a depot. These things came from the world of Satan, who does not give to humans for free. Therefore, sacrifices were needed in return. That's why the children died. So I managed to offer 9 souls to Queen Farida. We still see Catholic priests donating and offering things in charitable acts, but no one knows where these things come from. Catholic charity is hypocritical and dangerous. It's another facet of wickedness. You must flee from that if you cherish your life, by accepting these gifts and these so-called gifts and assistance that come from the world of Satan. You unknowingly sign a pact with Lucifer, to sell him your soul. You are now warned. My first participation in the annual World Summit of Satanists in the basement of India. One day the priest asked me to go with him to the parish so that I could accompany him to the annual meeting at the end of the year. It was December 24th, the year 1985. Toward the middle of the night the priest told me that we had to get down to business. It was just after Christmas Mass at 11 p.m. Around midnight we went to the local cemetery. A graveyard is one of the portals to the parallel world of Satan. It was from this cemetery that we were able to travel to the basement of India to attend the annual World Summit of Satanists. The Satanic Kingdom in India is not visible to the human eye. It is a spiritual realm. It is the headquarters of the world government of Lucifer, located in the basement of India. After invocations, the priest asked me to find the grave of a male corpse. Once this was done, he made a magical prayer and the person rose from his grave and I was able to talk with him. Then I lay down in his grave and we told him to keep my body during my trip to India. When I laid in his coffin my spirit came out of my body, and I landed in India to attend Satanists' World Rally. There were famous footballers, film and musical stars, well-known political leaders. They were fallen angels, superior demons and principalities. Newcomers like me had to be presented to the audience, and it was in this kind of gathering that major events that were to happen in the world in the upcoming year were determined. Thus, the outcome of politic, sporting and commercial events was decided and determined in advance. This satanic gathering takes place every year from December 24th to 31st. The change of political regime and the results of the elections are decided in advance at these meetings. Sports results and results of championships are also decided and determined in advance during this meeting. Diseases that must emerge on the earth in different regions to torment the inhabitants of various countries are also programmed. In these annual meetings, the fallen angels and principalities plan the wars and the military conflicts that they will provoke in different regions of the earth during the upcoming year. These principalities prepare and plan in advance the traffic accidents, plane crashes, they plan how to sink ships, they program the so-called natural disasters that will hit different regions of the earth, etc. Major and worldwide events, prejudicial to humanity and favorable to the kingdom of darkness, which will happen on the earth during the new year, are decided and programmed in advance by the principalities and fallen angels, while the whole world remain in festivities shouting Merry Christmas and Happy New Year, instead of being in prayer. In these gatherings, the choice of the presidents of different countries of the world is decided. It was during this gathering that I became aware of the change of political regime that would take place in my country, because I saw the fallen angels and principalities decide the arrival of democracy in my country and the devaluation of the monetary system. In this gathering of Satanists and demons, we also discussed the war in Angola, we decided to send invisible soldiers to continue to help the rebel leader. His army was smaller compared to that of the official government, but he was still progressing because he was helped by demons that were fighting alongside him. I would advise Christians to pray for peace in their country. Many political and military conflicts are decided and programmed in the invisible world to stop the work of God. The kingdom of darkness reserves the right to dominate over a country that has asked for help from the World Bank. The AIDS epidemic was also discussed. I'll use this opportunity to ask children of God not to argue or debate on issues related to sports in general, and football in particular. Let me advise you not to be a fan of a football team. The results of football championships and sports tournaments are decided in the invisible world, in these meetings of Satanists and demons. In these meetings, it was decided that Canada would become a country of labor and that Japan would develop scientifically and technologically. After the meeting, newly arrived initiates like myself were taken to another meeting room where we were to receive instructions, and in this room, there was a statue of Jesus Christ on the cross. In fact, this statue had a human body and fresh red blood oozed from this man on the cross. I do not know if it was a man or a demon. This man on the cross resembled the Jesus depicted on images of Catholic devotion. We have presented this man nailed to the cross as the leader of Christians, the Son of God who is worshipped by the Christians. Our host could not mention the name of Jesus Christ, because it is forbidden to mention the name of Jesus in the world of Satan. Then he incited us to scourge the false Jesus who was on the cross. We were instructed to subject this man on the cross to abuse and insults, and we were urged to flog him, spit on him, and punch him. As a result of this treatment, this man on the cross began bleeding even more. This symbolic act of the new initiates was a blasphemous act that concretized the rejection of Jesus Christ. But the bleeding man on the cross was a superior demon who had assumed the appearance of Jesus, and I understood that the image of the man on the cross in the Catholic Church was not to remind believers of the death of Christ, but rather to make fun of him. Before returning to earth they gave each of us a flying carpet, a book containing 120 magic prayers, a cord with a cross that was a telephone, and a stick that we were supposed to use in spiritual warfare. I was tasked to sacrifice 3,000 people in 20 years, and then we went back to earth. When my master the priest left the city, he entrusted me to a fallen angel known as Master Bomba of Bomba. Grace be with you all who have Jesus Christ as Master.